way, I'm sure you see at the bottom where it says chat, okay? Some of you have actually been chatted already, meaning, in other words, some people here have kind of said hello to others that are on the board right now. This is like Hollywood Squares, right? The big version? Yeah. Anyway, if you want to see if someone wrote you, just click the word chat at the bottom, and if the white column of chats will come up on the right. If you're curious, there are a couple there, and I just wanted to point that out. So this is the second session, and maybe, let's see, we got 31 people. I guess we can wait 2 more minutes. Does anyone have any leftover questions from last month? Does anyone remember last month? Does anyone remember last month?
No.
We're going to address one of my
Something
questions
that's
tonight.
and I know
You said you were going to address one of my questions tonight. You were going to discuss it about seeing images, someone who passed on.
Yes. Okay, we're going to get to that. Okay, yes, we will actually get to that. Speaking to our loved ones who are in, I won't use the expression on the other side because that really doesn't exist in Jewish thought. They don't use that expression. The other side means something, the Sitra Achra means something totally different than that.
What does it mean?
So yes, Debbie, we'll get that shortly. Anyone have another question?
To them, but having them appear.
Yeah, well, yes, we'll talk about that too when I get to that part.
Okay.
Rabbi, I want to mention from Richie Fuchs is now in hospice. Oh, Richie, I'm sorry to hear that. Is he down in Florida? Rick Miller just texted. No, it's up north. Well,
what?
Our prayers are with him. Rick,
Who is?
Rick Miller's, Richie's a friend, right? Rick, not a relative, correct? Yeah. Yeah, Richie Fuchs.
I don't know the name.
Yeah,
Didn't they live in Texas?
Most of you wouldn't know him.
Richie, Rabbi, how come I can't see anybody?
I can't answer that question.
The person who said they can't see anybody, you used the wrong link in the email. You need to click the one that says click here to join the meeting.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, so we seem to be holding here at 31. So Jeanette, if you would kind of mute everyone for now, if you don't mind. I know for, let's see, everyone's going to be muted in a minute. Okay. Hopefully, can everyone hear me? Just wave if you can hear me. Okay, yay. Okay, send kisses if you can hear me. Raise your right eyebrow if you can hear me now. Okay. Oh God, this is such power. Okay, anyway, what I wanted to say was, nice to see some of you. Wow, really some old-time faces, so to speak, in quotes, not of age, but people I haven't seen in a really long time. And from all over the country, including, I just see Sandy Bowles, just came down all the way from Tucson, Arizona. Wow, we have a couple of Florida people here, but Tucson, you win the prize tonight, Sandy, I do believe. We don't have anyone coming from Europe or Israel. So anyway, you win the long distance prize tonight. Anyway, what we're going to do is continue this discussion, part 2. Actually, in my preparations for tonight, I came across a phrase, so to speak, and you can say it could be euphemistic, and that is, rather than saying life after death, I came across the phrase post-mortem experience. That sounds much better, doesn't it? We are going to look into a post-mortem experience. Wow. Right, that those of you taking notes. Oh, by the way, Jeanette is recording tonight. So if you feel so inclined to hear this again, it'll be posted on the Temple's YouTube site. And I just want to mention that. So as we did last time, and for those of you who've taken classes with me before, you know that this is something very important to me. So we always begin with a bracha, with a blessing. And so hopefully all of you can see on your screen. I'll make it a little bit bigger. Gotten better at this as time has gone on. We're going to offer the prayer before study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Okay, so I'm going to eliminate that one, and you're going to come back to me for a moment. Okay, here we are again. So just to give a little bit of a review from last time when we looked at the biblical period. And as I've stated before, and that is that Judaism is an evolutionary evolutionary culture and religion and people, and our thoughts about everything in life, views of everything in life have evolved and changed over time. It would be much easier if, let us say, if I were a priest and you were all Catholics, and we were going to have a discussion about postmortem experience or life after death. This would be an easy presentation because I could probably say it in one paragraph and that's it, it's over, finished. But in Judaism, you can't do that. So going back to the biblical period, remember we talked about that when, everyone died, at least after the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. Theoretically speaking, the rabbis say that if Adam and Eve had not committed the sin of the apple, or I should say that Eve hadn't tempted him with the apple, with Adam, then they would have lived forever and no human beings would be in existence ever because it would be that would be it, okay? And they would never have died. They would have become immortal. But of course, the sin occurred according to the tradition, so to speak, and the teachings. And so the rest is all commentary. And so people in the Bible died. But what happened to them afterward? And again, after all, why do human beings have this need, almost a need, it seems? And we could explain this obviously psychologically and in other ways, anthropologically, sociologically. But there seems to be a need for us because to think for most people, and even those people I know, maybe some of you and others you know, who say, well, when I die, kaput, that's it, I'm finished, that's it, it's over. Okay, lights out, show's over, the end is near the final curtain, as Frankie sang. Well, the fact is that I bet even those people, if someone, as they say, well, but no one's ever come back and told us, if someone were to come back and tell them, they would say, good, I don't believe that anymore. Sounds good to me. Most human beings would like to think that when our body ceases to function, that we simply, whatever you want to call ourself, whether we want to go so far as to say, as it is in the tradition, and not only ours, but so many other religious traditions as well, of course, in cultures throughout the world and time, and that is our soul, that there is something that we call a soul, self, whatever, and which we would like to think continues even after this incredible biological machine no longer functions. And because thinking of our complete extinction of self is much too difficult existentially for most human beings to deal with, no less we'd like to say, you know something, this thing that I call self is so special, it really can't simply end when this body of mine ends. But also, of course, within our Jewish tradition, I'm speaking only of that tonight, obviously, is that based upon, as I mentioned last time, if God is good, and God created this being called a human being, Adam, every Chava, every Eve, every man, every woman on earth. Therefore, if God is good, then what is precious cannot die, because what is precious from God, as God is infinite, must also be infinite, because we have that soul connection with the infinite one. And therefore, as it is in existence before we come into life, it also then must, by definition, if God is good, have an existence afterward. So in the Bible, people die. And we talked about last time, I'm not going to ask anyone for questions and answers here, so see if those of you who actually remember anything whatsoever. But there was this place described throughout the Bible called Sheol, S-H-E-O-L. Remember we talked about that? It is a place where people died and everyone went there, whether you were good, whether you were bad, whether you were an in-between person like most of us are, everyone went there. There was no sense of judgment. There was no concept of heaven and hell or bad or good places. Everyone just went there and you were there. And basically, as it described in many parts of the Bible, we looked at this last time, you were there because you were part of the people of Israel. It's sort of like I remember from the Native Americans, the happy hunting ground, so to speak. You were there and you resided with the ancestors, and that's where you were. One of the often quoted parts of the Bible, and certainly I'm not sure who read it since Barry Safran moved down to Florida, but Barry Safran loved reading that part on Yom Kippur afternoon of the dry bones from Ezekiel, the valley of the dry bones. And we hear of the bones connected to the, hip bone connected to the whatever pelvis bone or whatever it is, and the bodies rise up again. But the point of that section there is the people of Israel being resurrected or coming back to life. In the early parts of the Bible, and most of the Bible, you really don't yet have a concept of individualism, of individuality. The individual was only a part of the people and the tribe. That's the way human consciousness was up until a certain point of time where we are tonight. And that is, we're going to look at the apocryphal period, which comes after the Bible, to the rabbinic period, the period basically of the Mishnah and the Talmud. So tonight we're basically looking at a period of time from approximately the 4th and 3rd centuries BCE, before the Common Era, through the 2nd century, 3rd century CE of the Common Era. That would be both apocryphal and rabbinic. What is apocryphal? There was and by the way, it's not related necessarily, it is sort of, to the word apocalypse, because some of the books in the Apocrypha talk about the apocalypse, but apocryphal basically in Hebrew, chitzoniim, means books that were not included in our Bible's canon, what we call the Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, Torah, Prophets, and Writings, the 34 books of the Hebrew Bible. Some of these apocryphal books, of which there are quite a few, over 100 of them actually are still in that we have today. Most of them, interestingly enough, some were written in Hebrew, but most of them were written in Greek or in Aramaic. Why Greek? Because many of them reflect the great influence of Greek thought and Hellenism, which started to come about in when? The 4th century BCE, right? I was at 350 as Alexander the Great, and Hellenism. Hellenism had an extraordinary effect upon the Jewish people. And therefore, before Hellenism, before the Greek, and after that, the Romans, am I going too fast, guys and ladies, men and women? Okay. Before the Greek and Roman period, they introduced something which never really was a part of human consciousness before, and that is the individual. A billion years ago, I took an art and music survey class in college, and I remember it being pointed out that somewhere in the Greek art world of statues, at some early point in Greek sculpture, every statue looked exactly the same. It was the idealized form of the magnificent looking male, of course, like Rick Miller, let us say, and myself, obviously, the Adonis, the perfect male. Every statue looked exactly the same. And then some point in time as Greek, thank you, Rick, for showing off that magnificent, keep your shirt on, okay? Okay. During some point in time later in Greek and certainly in Roman civilization, there began to be individualized statues. So Caesar didn't look like all emperors. Caesar looked like he really did. And this one looked like he really did. And there was now an emphasis upon the individual. Well, once you begin to do that, as pointed out in the Greek philosophers, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, you begin then throughout Greek and Roman civilization, the concern for individual behavior. Now, our Jewish people had this way before this. The Torah probably was certainly written somewhere at least around the 600s, if not 700s BCE, hundreds of years before this, in which there is a concern from God. Every human being is created in God's image, and God cares about the way we behave. We know this from the 10 Commandments and the 613 mitzvot. But in terms of Greek and Roman philosophy and outlook, is that the person's behavior in this world, because the Greeks and Romans believed in another world of experience, after the individual dies. And interestingly enough, not just a Sheol, but actually a place of individual existence of some sort. And so this began to affect Jewish thought as well. And even though, as I pointed out last time, in some of the later books of the Hebrew Bible, such as the book of Daniel, you begin to see sort of see this. It really comes out in the apocryphal literature, which then affects rabbinic literature and becomes a part of Jewish life and belief till this very day. Because certainly by the end of the 2nd century BCE, we begin, and this is influenced by Hellenism, by Greek thought and Roman thought later on, in a little while from then, is that there is now what's called dualism. There is a body and there is a soul. They are separate entities from each other. Plato talks about this, and that is when a soul enters a body, and then when that body ceases to function, the soul then will go to another place. And so we begin to see this in our Hebrew literature as well. Now, let me point out the following to all of you. The purpose of this survey of post-mortem experience, okay, boy, that sounds like a ride in Disney World, the post-mortem experience, okay. But anyway, is to help you to understand that this is a part of Jewish thought. What we're going to look into tonight and next time as well, of course, I'm not asking any of you to believe any of this. I'm not asking any of you to say, is Rabbi Moss saying to all of us, this is the way we should believe, this is Jewish belief. These are beliefs, plural, in Judaism. These are concepts that exist in Judaism, so that not one of you will ever say, as I've heard some people say, and teachers in Judaism as well, that Jews do not believe in life after death. It is not so, as you are learning. So I'm going to do now a shared screen because I have a number of things we're going to look at tonight, and I hope you're as excited as I am. I worked very hard at this, actually. Okay, here we are. So we're going to go over here. I'll make this a little larger now, so you see one page at a time. You might remember that in Genesis, I believe it was chapter 4 or something, anyway, it doesn't matter where, there was a man, when they list in Genesis, in the early chapters, all of these people who lived a long time, like Methuselah, who lived, what, to 900 something. But there was one person, and this is good for those of you who want to play a biblical trivia with someone, Trivial Pursuit, remember that game? Especially during pandemic, and you want to win, make sure you pull the card that says, who is the person in the Bible who does not die? The answer is Enoch, E-N-O-C-H. In the apocryphal literature, there are 4 books of Enoch. I don't believe anyone knows who the actual author was, but in Genesis, it says that Enoch simply ascended to the spiritual worlds. He did not die like everyone else. All human beings died. And the only other person in the Bible that this happened to was our dear friend, of course, Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. And so in the books of Enoch, he goes on a journey to the spiritual realms and is taken by God's angels, God's messengers, to see the worlds in the next world, in the next realm of experience post-mortem. And these are the book of Enoch, and by the way, as you can see, this is not my own translation, to say the least. You can go on the internet, God bless Google, and Google 1 Enoch, 2 Enoch, 3 Enoch, and the books will come up and you can read them, okay, for those of you who are interested in this. What is being done now, again, to say, is this real? Is this a real experience that whoever the author was had? Does Enoch really exist? Human beings need to deal with the unimaginable with the imaginative. But the imaginative is not when we say, oh, that person has a great imagination. It's a way of putting that person down and saying, boy, that person's not rational or irrational, right? Oh my, don't listen to that person. They're just all, crazy or whatever. In going back to most ancient times, the imaginative faculty that is the part of our brain or mind that can create visualizations and create pictures in order to deal with the life itself and the concepts that are too difficult to frame by the rational faculty, are as real as the imaginative faculty. We all know this because certainly we could have a dream and we wake up and then something happens. We said, wow, I dreamt that. It was like as real as it really happened, you know? Our imaginative faculty is very powerful. Well, in pre-modern times, it was seen to be as powerful and real as the rational. In these things we're going to look at tonight, how else can you think about the world after this one, except by using the imaginative faculty, because you certainly can't use the rational faculty since we have nothing rational to base it upon. So here is this person, Enoch. This is from Enoch 1, chapter 1. Oh, no, it's actually my one, first sharing. And thence I, meaning Enoch, went to another place, and he, meaning God, showed me in the west another great and high mountain of hard rock. And there was in it 4 hollow places, deep and wide and very smooth. How smooth are the hollow places and dark to look at. Then Raphael, an angel of God, answered, one of the holy angels who was with me. So Enoch, basically God's angels are the tour guides, taking Enoch through the realms of the next world, post-mortem experience. And as we're not going to see this tonight, but it's mentioned in, I think, Enoch 2. He actually goes to the 7 layers of heaven and the 7 layers of hell, all the various levels to which people will be judged. And we'll talk about where they're judged and when that happens after death. But notice the description. These hallowed places have been created for this very purpose, that the spirits of the souls of the dead should assemble therein. Yea, all the souls of the children of men should assemble here. It sounds very much like Sheol, right? All the spirits of the souls of all the dead, all the people will go to this place where Enoch is. And these places have been to receive them till the day of their judgment, until their appointed period, till the great judgment upon them. I saw the spirits of the children of men who were dead, and their voices went forth to heaven and made suit. And so he goes through a very big description here. He then said over here, then I asked regarding all these hollow places. The word hollow means empty places, but yet the souls are there. Why is one separated from the other? Actually, we're talking about Cain and Abel, who comes to meet here. And he answered me and said unto me, these 3 have been made the spirits of the dead might be separated. And such a division has been made. And he goes on to describe all of these things that are happening there. And this is from 1 Enoch, chapter 22, which was written in the 3rd century before the Common Era, meaning the 200s BCE. But also in Enoch, you begin to have a description in some of these places for the first time in Hebrew literature, and this is all Hebrew literature, but not included in our Bible. The rabbis at a later date had to codify and canonize the Bible, meaning they had to simply say, this is all to the Hebrew Bible, there's nothing else we can add to it. And this was for various reasons, political, religious, spiritual reasons, as also having to do with the rise of Christianity and the development of what the Christians would call the New Testament. But another one of these apocryphal books, the Testament of Abraham, we begin to see things such as the righteous are treated differently than the sinners. The 2 angels, notice there's always angels, it's about Enoch again, the one on the right and the one on the left. These are those who record, guess what? Sins and righteous deeds. The one on the right records righteous deeds, while the one on the left records sins, and the sun-like angel who holds the balance in his hand weighs the righteous deeds and the sins. And so Enoch, in his travels to the next world, would, of course, guess what? He would therefore begin to see a place where the good and the righteous, the good and the wicked, were being separated and judged accordingly based upon their deeds. Guess where? Of course, what? When they were on earth, so to speak, in this realm, in life. In the next one here, we begin to see there's actually a mention of Sheol, but it's seen in a very, very different way. And let me just see where my notes are here. In this one, as you'll see to the end of this, there actually is even a discussion slightly, not directly, about resurrection. That is the dead coming back to life in judgment. And by the way, you'll notice after each one of these verses from this one, I think there's 3 Enoch, is that you'll notice all these parentheses. I didn't delete these, because what you begin to see is all of these are showing that these verses can be found in either our Hebrew Bible, Proverbs, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, or you'll also find them in the New Testament in Christianity, Acts, Matthew, book of Matthew, one of the Gospels, book of Revelation. And so the apocryphal literature was ultimately used by both the Jewish community and later on the Christian community. Everything in Christianity, everything came from, guess where? From Judaism, on some fashion or another. So let's continue with our dear friend here, Enoch. And in those days, the earth will return that which has been entrusted to it, and Sheol will return that which has been entrusted to it and that which it has revived, and destruction will return what it owes. In other words, the dead will come back to life. Where's Sheol? Remember, it's the place of the dead. The dead will be given back to the earth. And he, meaning God, will choose the righteous and the holy from among them, okay? So there will be a judgment on the resurrection day. For the day has come near when they must be saved, because what? They're the good ones, righteous ones. And in those days, the chosen one will sit on his throne. Granted, of course, for Christianity, who is this? Obviously, Jesus. I'm sure if we want to have a lot of fun here, we can go to the New Testament, book of Revelation, the book of Acts, and I'm sure that that's what's being discussed here for the chosen one. For us, who is it? The Mashiach, the Messiah. And all the secrets of wisdom will flow out from the counsel of his, meaning the Mashiach's mouth, for the Lord of spirits has appointed him and glorified him. We'd say, boy, that sounds like Christianity. Wow, okay. Guess what? It's in our apocryphal book. And in those days, the mountains will leap like rams, and the hills will skip like lambs, satisfied with milk, and all become angels in heaven. Their faces will shine with joy, for in those days the chosen one will have risen, and earth will rejoice. Notice, the Mashiach will rise, and the righteous will dwell upon it, and the chosen will walk upon it. And so you have here, and we really obviously have to take not simply this selection from this whole book to really get the whole picture here. But as you can see in the apocryphal selections that I've shared with you just now, you really have now a sense of moving forward. Again, in our Hebrew Bible, Sheol, a place where just everyone went and that was it. You're one with the people, and since the people of Israel is eternal, you're eternal. Okay. But then starting in the 3rd and 4th, 3rd, going to the opposite order, 2nd centuries, you begin to, number one, have a distinction wherein there is a concept of individual existence after death, number one, and you begin to have something which becomes very, very important, particularly in Western religions, meaning Christianity, Judaism, I should say first, Christianity and Islam, and that is judgment of one's actions in this life. By the way, we will not talk about it tonight. Next month, we will talk about reincarnation. We're not up to that yet. That's later on. Okay. So, in the rabbinic period, we are now in this because notice in my quote, in this quotation here is from, in parenthesis here, right? You see this, Ketubot, which is one of the tractates of the Talmud. There were 2 Talmuds written. The first one was written in the year 400 of the Common Era in Jerusalem. The second one was written in Babylonia, but in the year 500 of the Common Era. So the first one is called Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, the second one, the Babylonian Talmud. Both of these were based upon the Mishnah, which was written in the year 200 of the Common Era in the Holy Land in Israel. These works were also based upon or incorporated the Midrash, which were rabbinic compendia of theology and thought and belief and imagination and the rational imaginative faculties, and all of them to describe what Jewish practice, number one, but also Jewish belief. So now the thing is, the rabbis, based upon what we just looked at, the apocryphal literature, they really began to say, you know something, what is this place that we all go to that Enoch went to? What is it? And they developed the concept of, here in the second line, the world to come, or in Hebrew, Olam Haba. Okay, actually, pretty cool. 1 second, I'll write out for you. Olam, can I do that? Yeah, okay, pretty cool. Olam Haba. Okay, the Olam Haba, the world to come. They developed this concept, which we would call heaven. Okay, when a person dies, their soul now will continue in existence in a place called Olam Haba, or the world to come. Olam Haba exists right this very moment. I'm going to getting closer to your question, Debbie Lazen, and that is, in the world to come, all souls will have an existence. In the world to come, there will be a judgment. The good souls will go to what is called Gan Eden. Oops. You see how good I am at typing. Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, which is the Jewish heaven. And if you are, and the bad people will go to Gehenna or Gehenna, which is our version, our wording for hell. So if you want to trick really your friends or not friends, you can say, hey, go to Gehenna. And they'll say, oh yeah, where is that? And you say, go to hell. Okay, sorry, okay. Anyway, I'm glad Suzanne's laughing. Okay, good, thanks, Suzanne. I can see you down there. Okay. Anyway, the Gan Eden and Gehenna exist in Olam Haba, in the world to come. They are there now. When a person dies, their soul moves to this place. It could move there immediately or later on. Some of you might be familiar, probably most of you, and unfortunately we can't interact with each other by questions and answers, so I can't ask you how many of you know the answer, so I'll just give the answer myself. And that is, traditionally we say Kaddish for 11 months, correct? We're actually supposed to say Kaddish for 12 months, but you're only supposed to say it for 11 months for good people, 12 months for the not so good people. Why? Because saying Kaddish for a loved one or for anybody, saying the Kaddish helps that soul in its journey and judgment in the world to come. The souls, I'll put it personally in that sense, the souls of our loved ones need our assistance. Kaddish, saying Kaddish, helps that soul, the neshama, the high, remember there are 5 levels to the soul, we talked about that a little bit last time, the neshama on its spiritual journey to Olam Haba. And therefore, what is to understand is that saying Kaddish is like a, what should we call it? It's sort of like a turbo boost to help them along the way. The bad people don't need much of a boost because their good deeds will project them into the Olam Haba and of course to the Garden of Eden. But the bad people need the help of Kaddish even more so. So for them, you say it for 12 months. For the good people, you only have to say it for 11 months. Please do not ask me, is this you really, Rabbi? Is that true? We're dealing with metaphysical things, with spiritual things. The word, you can ask any question you want to, of course, but really it's what it is described within our tradition, and of course actually becomes a part of practice. For most people, you only have to say Kaddish for 11 months, not 12 months for that reason. What is the world to come going to be like, Olam Haba? I chose this because I really love this. Obviously, I love this description. It is stated, this is from Deuteronomy chapter 32, and from the blood of the grape you drank foaming wine. The sages, meaning the rabbis, said, the world to come is not like this world. And by the way, for those of you who are going to ask me, well, like the Muslims, do we believe there's a place where there are going to be 72 virgins? No. Okay. We're not concerned about that. As you'll see from this paragraph, what are we concerned about as Jews? Food. Okay. In this world, there is suffering involved in picking grapes and impressing them. Oy. Okay. In other words, when we go to make wine, you have to work hard to make the wine. For those of you who remember that wonderful episode of Lucille Ball when she's pressing the grapes, okay, it's not easy and messy. By contrast, listen to this. In the world to come, next world, one will bring one grape in a wagon. That's how big the grape is. It's going to be as big as a wagon or a boat, and set it in a corner of his house and supply from it enough to fill about the amount of a large jug from one single grape. And with its wood, one will kindle a fire under a cooked dish. And every grape you will have will produce no less than 30 full jugs of wine. Okay, so in other words, the fruit in the world to come will be tremendous, bigger than Trader Joe. I mean, it's going to be unbelievable size fruit, because what are we concerned about as Jews? Oh, the size of the fruit, that's how great it's going to be. It's going to be incredible. So in the next one from Leviticus Rabbah, which also, of course, deals with now from the rabbinic period, this is not the Talmud, but a book of Midrash, of rabbinic commentary and thought. Interestingly enough, in this world to come in Olam Haba, as I said a few moments ago, there will be judgment. By the way, if I may take a moment to interject with a joke, okay, we probably need one at this point in time. Okay. A cab, maybe some of you heard this before. I think I actually offered this once on a Friday night, no less. A cab driver and a rabbi die in the same day. And they come before in Olam Haba, they come before, of course, the judge of all, God, the Holy One. And the first one up is, between the two of them, is the cab driver. And the cab driver says, well, so who are you? And the cab driver gives his name to God. And God says, oh, yes, I've heard a lot about you and your cab driving. You know something, why don't you come and sit right in front of me on the right side of me? That's the right side of God, is the most powerful place of all. And you're going to have the front row seat in this theater. We have wonderful shows 24 hours a day. And actually, it's amazing here because, after all, it's Olam Haba, it's Gan Eden. You can select your own individual show on the big screen, and everyone sees their own individual shows. And yes, there's all the food you want to have. It's right there. It's right for you. Of course, you're Jewish. Why not? So anyway, you have the best seat in the house. So now the rabbi comes up, and the rabbi says, I'm Rabbi so-and-so. And God says, yes, I've heard a lot about you, Rabbi. You've done a lot of good things, teaching Torah and helping people and this and that and visiting hot, whatever. And so God says, well, Rabbi, you're going to be in row 5,244 behind a pillar. So the rabbi says, behind the pillars? Well, God says, don't worry. There's movement in the theater. I move people around based upon how things work out for them. In Olam Haba, don't forget, there's continued judgment about their actions. So the rabbi then says, well, God, you are the Holy One. You are the Almighty. I don't mean to question you, to say the least. I'm just a human being. But how come the cab driver has the best seat in the house, the taxi driver, and I'm behind the pillar in row 5,244? And God says, you obviously never were a passenger in this cab driver's cab. People prayed harder and longer in his cab than they ever prayed in your synagogue. Okay, anyway. So there will be judgment in the world to come, and listen to this. Thus in the future, the Holy One will say to the soul, why did you transgress before me? Okay. It will say to him, Master of the universe, I did not sin. The body is the one who sinned. From the moment I left it, I have been like a pure bird bursting into the air. How have I transgressed before you? In other words, the soul reaches Olam Haba, and God is going to judge this neshama, this soul. And the soul is going to say to God, similar to the rabbi, what are you blaming me for? I didn't commit the sins. It was the soul that made me commit the sins. God will then say to the body that's obviously buried, Why have you transgressed before me? And the body will say to him, Master of the universe, I did not sin. The soul is the one who sinned. From the moment she left me, I've been tossed like a rock is thrown down to the ground. In other words, buried. How would I have transgressed before you? What does the Holy One blessedly do to them? God brings the soul and throws it into a body and judges them together, as it is said, he will call to the heavens, God will call to the heavens above to bring the soul and bring the soul, and to the earth to bring the body. Oh, I see. To the heavens to bring the soul to the heavens, and the earth takes the body and judges them together, even though they're both in two different places. The idea behind this one that I shared is that we now have definitely in Judaism, the rabbinic period is the formative period of Jewish life to this very day, traditional Judaism, traditional Jewish thought, and that is in Olam Haba, there will be a period of judgment. Now, for the good, of course, things are pretty good. So like this theater I described and the grapes. However, for the evil, you might now ask me or ask yourselves, would a soul remain there going to Gehenna, hell, or actually the area before that, which we'll call, use the English word purgatory, and that is an area, a waiting period for judgment. But guess what? In Jewish thought, every soul that is judged for its sins has the opportunity to do teshuvah, even in Olam Haba, the next world, in order to be forgiven of the sins, in order to go to Gan Eden, to move up in the theater, so to speak. Understand what I'm trying to say? Okay. And so no one is so evil that they will remain in Gehenna, in hell, so to speak, the Jewish version of it, forever. Now, in this place, there's obviously, therefore, judgment. But now going back to Debbie's question, is that in the world to come, there will be, therefore, a consciousness. There will be a self-awareness, obviously, how souls are going to communicate with each other. They're obviously not going to need a voice box or whatever because they have no body. But there will be a soul existence. We can contact the dead, and the dead can contact us in Judaism. We can see, Debbie's question, the dead, and they are aware of our actions as well. I love this story. Okay. With regard to the deceased knowledge of what transpires, in other words, the dead know what's going on here. Come and hear a proof, as it is told. Zeiri would deposit his dinars, dollars, with his innkeeper. While he was going and coming to and from the school of Rav, she died, the innkeeper, and he did not know where she put the money. So guess what he did? Now remember the Bible last time when Saul needed help to understand what he should do in battle. He was able to go to the witch of Endor, remember that story, and bring up the dead soul spirit of the prophet Samuel. So he went after Zeiri, where? To her grave in the cemetery. And said to her, where are the dinars that you hid when I gave you to hold on to them? She replied, okay, go and get them from beneath the hinge of the door in such and such a place. She's telling him where she hid them. But notice, I love this part here. And tell my mother that she should send me my comb and a tube of eyeshadow, and with such and such a woman who's going to die, and come here tomorrow. Apparently the dead knows what goes on in this world. There's another cute story. You might have heard this one. Isaac and Moish are good friends, good buddies. And they're now on in age. And they make a deal with each other. And that is, the first one who dies is going to contact the other one who's still alive and let him know what the world, Ba'olam Haba, the world to come, is like. And so it turns out that Moish is the one who dies first. So lo and behold, the next day, Isaac receives communication from the realm of the dead, Olam Haba, from Moish. And Moish says to Isaac, this is a great place, Moish. I can't wait for you to be here. So Isaac says, I'm not rushing. I don't want to rush there. What's happening there? And so he says, well, to tell you the truth is, I got some good news for you and bad news. So Isaac says, what's the good news? Well, the good news is, would you believe, I know you and I love playing baseball, we're on the same baseball team. I'm going to be playing baseball up here. It's fantastic. It's unbelievable. Well, what's the bad news? You're pitching tomorrow. Okay. So I love, you probably heard that one as well. But the bottom line is, I love this story because even though it's very playful, yeah, send your toothpaste to the next world. Okay, try to figure that one out. What it's basically saying is, in a playful way by the rabbis, this is from Barachot, by the way, which is the first tractate of the Talmud, okay, is the fact that there is an existence of the neshama, a conscious existence of the neshama in Olam Haba. So therefore, going back to Debbie's question is, yes, when we, now make it personal, when we, when I, when you, when we, when I die, I will know I'm there, and you will, and I will also be aware of the people who survive me, and I would be able to contact them as well as they would be able to, in some fashion, contact me. Yes, this is a belief in Jewish tradition. If you don't believe me, Fiddler on the Roof and From a Sarah. Remember that dream scene. Just like this story here, where do you think they got it from? From Jewish tradition. It might be folk belief, it might be real, whatever, that is a belief in Judaism. I found in this quote here from Pesikta Rabati, which is another rabbinic work, Gehenna, Gehenna, however, is a pretty bad place. Gehenna is an abode for punishment for the person who did not live a righteous life in accordance with the ways of God and Torah, Exodus Rabbah. In addition to its punitive aspect, Gehenna was rarely seen as realms that would be forever, but rather as seen as a place of purgation and purification. After going down to Gehenna and receiving punishment due to him, the sinner can be still even there forgiven from all his sins, and like an arrow from the bow is flung out of Gehenna. In other words, evil people will not be there forever. There is always, even for the dead, in Olam Haba, the opportunity to do teshuvah, to do repentance. Gehenna is a place of darkness. It is written in the Talmud, oh, this is really gross, that the sweat of the holy angels, the chayot, emptied down upon the wicked in Gehenna. Their sweat is like a fiery stream. So one of the punishments that Enoch saw of bad people in Gehenna is that they are bathed in the sweat of the angels. Oh God, okay, gross. It's really bad. But all the things, for those of you who are into 7 layers of heaven and 7 layers of hell, and if you read Dante's Inferno or Paradise Lost, all the stuff that's there in Christianity that you've ever seen in some of the movies about these things, it all is within not only the apocryphal literature, but ultimately was absorbed into rabbinic literature. Okay, so with all of this, I want to put all of this together to bring us to the last part of my discussion tonight, and then I'm going to open it for questions, answers, and whatevers. And that is Techiyat HaMetim, resurrection of the dead. Judaism believes in resurrection. Again, that's where Christianity got it from. Where did we get it from? Well, notice last month, we don't find it much in the Bible at all. There is some sense, again, of the Ezekiel vision of the bones coming back to life, but that was the people of Israel. Of individuals coming back to life, we don't have that until the apocryphal period, and now in the Talmudic period, you're talking about the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th centuries of the Common Era. But this became so much a part of Judaism that it actually becomes a part of the halachic, or actually the required or legal side of traditional Jewish life. What do I mean by that? Maimonides, Rambam, who lived in the 11th century, so moving much further up in time, one of the greatest thinkers of Jewish life, said very specifically in his 13 articles of faith, of belief, that it is essential that a Jew believes in resurrection of the dead. To deny a belief, emunah, in resurrection of the dead is to believe in the non-existence of God. The belief in God, in other words, goes with the belief in the resurrection of the dead, because if there is a God, then there will be the resurrecting of the dead. What is, again, I'm going to give you the timeline now. There is, and we'll talk more about this next time in the Kabbalah, in reincarnation, where they get much more into the existence of the neshama of the soul before the person's born. But let us just take life, birth, life, and this realm that we're in, death, olam haba, which exists now, in which people, souls exist, are there for an extended, long period of time until Mashiach comes. The Messiah comes. When the Mashiach comes, everything stops, and then there will be Techiyat HaMetim, the resurrection of the dead. Now, what is the resurrection of the dead? And that's the timeline. Everyone understand? Life, death, olam haba, judgment, heaven, hell, movement between the two, and then Mashiach time, the Messiah comes, and then resurrection of the dead. Resurrection of the dead, and by the way, I wasn't sure of this because, and I'll say to me personally, as I've thought a lot about these things, obviously, you can tell I've thought about them, and not just because I'm a rabbi, I'm interested in whatever. Anyway, I'm open. By the way, you're going to ask me, well, Rabbi, what do you think about all this? I am open spiritually to the idea of the spiritual resurrection. In other words, in Jewish tradition, there is the belief that at this very moment in time, we have a spiritual existence in another world. There is the spiritual replica of everything in this world in another realm of existence, in another dimension. And therefore, when I will be resurrected with the coming of the Messiah, my spirit, soul, body will come back to life. But, and you could check this out if you go online, and by the way, this is in traditional Judaism, this is, if you go to, and also for those of you who are familiar with Chabad, you know, Chabads are everywhere, Chabad, CHABAD.org, and you Google resurrection of the dead, it will state this if you don't believe me. Of course you believe me, obviously. And it says very specifically, resurrection of the dead is a physical resurrection. Now you're going to say to me, how is that possible, Rabbi? And I asked my teacher yesterday in Jerusalem about this, who's an Orthodox Jew in Yerushalayim. And he said the traditional belief is, and even though a body could be buried hundreds of years before, and you open up a grave, there's almost nothing left except some bones, especially in a traditional burial where in Israel you just buried on a flat board, no less, not even a casket, is that the body physically, bones and organs will come back to life when the Mashiach comes. And if you were to say, how could that happen? The answer is, it's a mystery. You can't ask that. You could ask the question, how can it happen? But that question will go nowhere because that's based upon rational thought rather than metaphysical thought. But where practice and superstition / and belief all come into being, for those of you familiar with this, there is a place in every Jewish cemetery for the burial of amputated limbs. Why? Because when Mashiach does come and a shofar will be sounded, all of the limbs will, I don't know how they're going to do this. They're going to find the bodies from which they were taken from, and they will all come back to life physically and spiritually. Also, there was a tradition going back to the rabbinic period, through the Middle Ages. I don't know if many people are still buried this way, and where they actually buried a shovel in the casket of a person buried outside the land of Israel, because the Techiyat HaMetim will only occur in Israel. So all the souls of the Jews, don't ask me what happens to non-Jews, I don't know. All the souls of the Jews need to dig a tunnel from where they are to Israel to be resurrected. So this is where culture, superstition, belief, all come mixed up together and practice. But resurrection has become such a powerful part of Jewish tradition that 3 times a day, at the end of the Amidah, and by the way, it is in our prayer book, Mishkan Tefillah, that we use at services, where what? At the end of the Amidah, we say what? We in Reformed tradition, prayer book, we say, Baruch Atah Adonai Mechaye what? Hakol, right? That's a euphemism. Hakol means everything. Blessed are you who brings back to life everything. But in traditional Judaism, by the way, in Mishkan, it has in parentheses, so you can say this. And I think the other morning, the other Shabbat, I went on to Central Synagogue in Manhattan, and there they say Meitim, Baruch Atah Adonai Mechaye HaMeitim. The word Meitim means the dead. 3 times a day, traditional Jews and conservative Jews say, blessed are you, O Lord, who what? Resurrects the dead. It is talking about this. Just to say, going back to this thing here, they come up with the concept of the resurrection of the dead, the rabbis, from our Hebrew Bible itself. In Sanhedrin, another book of the Talmud, pages 90b and 91b. By the way, the A and the B, they were folios. The way they printed in those days was an A side and a B side, and back and the front of every page. So rather than saying 90, 91, it was 90 A, B, 91 A, B. That's the way it's referred to in the Talmud. When Rabbi Gamliel was asked how he knew God would resurrect the dead, he replied, quoting Deuteronomy from the Torah, for it is written, and the Lord said to Moses, behold, you will sleep with your fathers, and this people will rise up. And from the prophets, Isaiah, your dead men shall live, together with my dead bodies they shall arise. And from the writings, it goes on. So they were able to find verses in the Bible to substantiate the belief in the resurrection of the dead. It does say in Ta'anit, another tractate from the Talmud, resurrection is for the righteous and not the wicked. Others taught, however, Jews and non-Jews, righteous and wicked, will live again. In other words, they are now saying, this one rabbi in Ta'anit 7a said, everyone will be resurrected, including the non-Jews. Wow. Okay. So anyway, we are going to talk about next time Gilgulim, which is the Hebrew word for reincarnation. So let me stop that. Wow, you're all still here. Okay, so again, what does all this mean? I don't know. Actually, what it really means is it offers us into insight about how our Jewish, and I underscore this word again, Jewish ancestors tried to grapple with really the great existential experience that all of us will confront, may be many years away for all of us someday, and that is our own deaths. And the way that they have conceptually dealt with this is to develop concepts of life after this one. Also notice, of course, the ideas of judgment, that the way we behave becomes very significant in terms of affecting what's going to happen to us after this life. And why? Because again, it's based upon that very important basic concept in Judaism, and that is God is good. And therefore, if a person was really bad in this life, let's say, whatever that means, and nothing happened, whatever that means, something happens to everyone, and it doesn't matter who they are, really. The bad people don't really get away with everything in life. But anyway, really get away with a lot. Then in the next world, they're going to be the ones that go to Gehenna, and they'll be dealing with that stuff and the sweat of angels and all that kind of stuff for a long, long time. And therefore, existence now is relatively short compared to the life in the next world, because that's going to go on for a lot of years. Because again, Olam Haba will continue until the Mashiach comes, when all existence will end in this world and the world to come, and then there will be the resurrection of the dead, and there will be a new form of existence. What that existence will be like, obviously, no one knows. According to traditional sources, however, is a resurrected body. Our bodies will come back to life. Now, you might say, no matter when I'm buried, according to traditional Judaism, yes. On the other hand, if it's more acceptable to believe that my spiritual body will come back to life, that's another possibility. Okay, everyone see, can you unmute yourselves? Okay, very good. Mazel tov. Okay, I hear you breathing. Okay. Does anyone have, okay, so and again, remember there's going to be a continuation next time into the Middle Ages, Jewish philosophy then, Maimonides, etc., but then also continuing into the interesting thing of reincarnation and how that deals with all of this, which will raise even more questions, to say the least. Presents a lot of problems, including, well, anyway, we'll talk about it next time. But anyway, does anyone have any questions, comments, whatever's?
I have a question.
Okay, just give us your name, because it's hard to find boxes. Yeah, this is like I said, Hollywood.
Erwin.
Hi, Erwin.
Hi. Most societies drew up a concept of heaven and hell to keep their people in check. So you'd be rewarded if you do good on earth. What do you say to that? Isn't that the reason they created a heaven and hell concept?
You could say that, yes. I do want to state, and I actually should have said this earlier, in Judaism, there was never an emphasis on Olam Haba, as it is in Christianity, meaning heaven. Judaism has always stressed this worldly existence and what we do now. And, however, what we do now will affect what is going to happen to us in Olam Haba, the next world. But in Christianity, the emphasis in its traditional teaching, I'm not saying the average Christian person or anything like that, really stresses more the next world. And by doing that, yes, you could see that. In Judaism, yeah, I mean, look, after all, didn't your mom or dad or our parents would say to us, you do, don't do that, it's bad, or you get punished or whatever. I mean, it's one of the basic experiences that we all have as children, as parents in life. You'd like to think that you are rewarded and punished, so to speak, or negatively or whatever, for the good things or the bad things that we do. But it was not used in the same way as Christianity. So to use what you're saying, it really was not a part of Judaism. I have no doubt there were rabbis and teachers in Judaism who used it that way, but never was used to the extreme that it was used in Christianity.
Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Yeah, I have two quickies. Number one, you said with Yisker, the good people, it's 11 months, and hi there. The others, it's 12 months. How do you decide? How do you decide between who's good and who's bad when it comes to Yisker?
Then say Kaddish, then do it for 12 months.
I
And
meant Kaddish, yes.
Yeah, everyone,
Yes,
then do it for 12 and everyone will be happy. But actually, traditionally, again, in traditional Judaism, you would say it for parents, is that you're supposed to only say it for your parent for 11 months, because if you say it for 12 months, you might say, well, I just want to make sure I'm covering all the bases for mom or dad. The fact is, then you might be giving him a canon horror, because maybe they weren't so good. There's always that little switch at the end in Judaism, right?
You're saying bad things about them.
Right. So you want to do things
about
unless
as far as resurrection, a lot of people are getting cremated today. That probably doesn't change much of that resurrection, does it? Do you think?
Well, traditional Judaism, obviously, which does definitely believe in resurrection of the dead, is against cremation, because
Right.
cremation is intentionally changing the form of that body and affecting its form, which
Right.
could theoretically affect that which is resurrected in the future time when the Messiah comes, theoretically. I mean, obviously everything's theoretical. So in traditional Judaism, pasnish, you cannot be cremated. And obviously in a modern Judaism, cremation, I won't use the word accept, well, it is acceptable practice. Many people are doing it today. Most rabbis, including myself, have officiated at cremations. And, but the reason why in traditional Judaism, theoretically, based upon the system that I've shared with you tonight, it could affect the ability for that body to come back together, because it's just little pieces of ash and bones and whatever. Yeah,
That spread
yeah.
through the ocean.
Yeah. Any
Thank you.
other questions
Can I make a comment?
or comments, questions, anything? Yeah, sure. Hi, Joe.
How you doing? It's Joe Bolton out in Tucson. It's 70 degrees. Anyway, when the creator made the universe, he didn't go to the store. He said, be there. That means that he is thinking about everything in the universe, every electron and positron, anything else that it's made of continuously, or it won't be there. And he's beyond time and space. So he can be anywhere. So that means he cannot not be here. He's right where we are. So if you feel lonely, who left? And I learned in metaphysics in school that the coming, we'll leave our body and we'll say, oh, we got rid of that body. The thing was wore out, it ached and everything. So your spirit is you. Your body is just incidental. You'll actually, when you resurrect it, you won't have a gender because you won't need a gender. And we would learn that, that's taught, but learned that the eye has not seen nor the ear heard what is in store for us. So I take that as like a mystery. I just put it in a box. I'll get there. I'll find out what it's all about. And it was a good presentation, Rabbi. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that, Joe, for the thoughts. Certainly obviously within Judaism, there is this, therefore, this belief. Anyone have any other questions, comments? Debbie, did that sort of answer your question tonight? Blazin?
I'm still here. I interpret it maybe a little bit different. I think you had said there will be a soul existence, but then you continued with the resurrection thing. And I think you said you believe in a spiritual resurrection.
That's me.
Could that have been what happened?
Well, the resurrection hasn't happened yet. The resurrection will only happen when the Messiah comes, which is sometime in the future.
Okay, so this is a soul existence?
Right. Olam Haba is a soul existence for a undetermined amount of time, because no one knows when the Mashiach, when the Messiah is going to come, and everything will stop. All history, every existence will cease, and then there will be the resurrection of the dead. All the dead will come back to life. Those who are living at that moment in time stay alive in a spirit in this new realm of existence.
What if a deceased one, you never see them again, and some you do see again? It just happens that way, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, you mean in the Olam Haba, in the world to come? Yeah.
No, after a person passes away.
Oh.
You see, like a shadow of them or something. Sometimes you do, and sometimes you never do.
Right. No one knows how this will happen. When my sister Margie, when our parents died, our father died twice over the years. My father appeared to me in dreams and other places.
Oh, okay.
And I told this to my sister Margie, and she said, this never happened to me. Why isn't it happening? There's no way to explain these things. And my feeling is also, and some of you might have had these experiences. If you want to share them, you're welcome to, or not. Of course, I've learned over my years with people, you can't force it to happen. this person says, every night I pray that my loved one, whoever it is, talks to me. Well, you can't make it happen. It only does happen. But also to realize that these things happen in different ways. It might be this person's loved ones. There was a clock in the house that rang at weird times, and then they said that was his clock, so it must be him trying to, you read into things. Obviously, you don't know what the truth is, obviously, but it happens, but you can't make it happen.
Rabbi, what about deja vu? You've heard through the years that sometimes the soul comes back in another person. That's why you're feeling deja vu, that you've been here before, you've done this before, or something. What do you believe about that?
Well, in spiritual experiences, anything becomes possible. So certainly we've had various experiences of this, as well as we're going to talk about next time in reincarnation, that you can be actually a reincarnated other person's, a part of a person's soul can become a part of your soul. And that person could join into your soul for two reasons. Either one, to help you to become a better soul, or that person's soul needs more help in correcting something by something that you're able to do that he or she wasn't able to do in a past life. So parts of souls can be reincarnated into other people's souls. So, for instance, and some of you heard me discuss this about my grandmother's grandfather, who was the last rabbi in my family. And he and I have the same we basically have the same face, the same eyes, same forehead. And when I opened the door, after knocking on the door, obviously, of the apartment of his 91-year-old son-in-law, who had not seen the rabbi in probably 50 years. And he opened the door to greet me because I'd made an appointment. I called him up and said, I found you in Pittsburgh. I want to meet with you. His name was Dr. Aaron Kessler. And he opened the door. He almost collapsed because he thought that I was the rabbi come back to life.
Wow.
So a part of Rabbi Wolf Zelf Turbowitz, I have no doubt, is a part of me. And not just biologically, but other things as well. So that there are sparks. And by the way, if you want to learn more about this, read my book, buy my book, okay? But the fact is that I do believe, and I think it's possible to have these spiritual type experiences where with other people and other things, all of a sudden we have an insight into to the other dimensions, into the spiritual realms that are constantly poking into our realm in various kinds of ways. And the key is to be open to them and not to poo-poo them or to say that's nonsense. In Jewish tradition, in the Hasidic tradition particularly, nothing is coincidental. Everything has a meaning. Barbie?
Let's go back to the resurrection, okay? The Messiah comes, all the souls are reunited with bodies, and we are all in one place. Do you live forever at that point? Or do we go through the cycle of death again?
Okay. Well, I asked that actually I asked him based upon reincarnation, what happens. So I asked my teacher, Eliyahu Shir, this week about that, thinking about tonight's class. And he said, we'll see.
Never happened.
That it was a little bit of a cop-out, I guess. Because it really is beyond rational, right? Rational. You can't really imagine what would happen. I mean, because also ask the question, where's everyone going to live? Okay, where's the food going to come? There's so many questions that could theoretically be asked. If you have a body again, then the soul body doesn't need food. A human body does need some kind of sustenance, obviously. So if 1,000,001 questions begin to arise, and there's no answer for them. There really isn't, because that's a good question. Will those bodies then have to go through a whole nother cycle of possibilities? My quick reaction to that is that I can't say it. Okay. Jeanette is writing something here to everyone. If you maybe saw it, a registration obviously we send out to the next class. Is that in Judaism, and we'll talk about this a little bit more next time with reincarnation, because it's a basic part of reincarnation belief. And that is we all have, there's a duality of soul and body. Our soul is a connected entity to our body, but our soul and body are separate entities from each other. One is physical, the other is spiritual, obviously. And therefore, the purpose of existence is to enable our spiritual essence to be able to go through a process of repairs that can only occur by the performance of mitzvahs, of mitzvot, of good deeds and religious deeds according to our tradition. And so in order to do those things, you need a body. A soul without a body can't do visiting the sick. A soul without a body can't attend a funeral. A soul without a body can't attend a wedding. A soul without a body can't enjoy humintashen or latkes or matzah. You need a body for all of these mitzvot. Each one of them, when done properly, contributes to the continued repairing of that neshama, of that soul. And therefore, you need the two together always. What eventually will happen, however, is that soul ultimately is not going to need that body anymore at some point in the future. And then that soul will have achieved its spiritual highest level after a number, this gets into reincarnation for next time, lifetimes, in order to then not need to come back again and thereby be one with God. So my answer maybe to that question that you asked is that at some future point in time, at some future time, the reparation of the souls will not be necessary because all the souls will have reached that level of spiritual height in which, guess what? All returns back to where it was in the beginning before creation itself, when all was God, only God. But whether that could ever really happen is the big question, right?
Rabbi,
Yeah.
Rabbi?
Is that Roberta's voice? Yes, Roberta.
I would like to know, you were part of my dying process twice. You know, one with the neck, the pneumonia, the whole bit. And I came so close to death. Was that part of anything to do with the soul and the body, or anything to do with what we were talking about? I mean, I was literally dying.
Yeah, it could very well have been. Last time you weren't able to be at the class. There are, in Jewish tradition, there's 5 levels to the soul: the nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, and yechida. We'll leave chaya and yechida out right now because those are very high spiritual levels, which not everyone actually achieves in their lifetime. Most people don't. But nefesh, ruach, and chaya are. The neshama sometimes leaves the body, and that's what we experience as a possibility of death or death itself. And then when that person comes back to life, in quotes, that neshama comes back into that body to revive itself and bring it back like you experienced. Some of you might recall my bike accident, which became famous in Bnei Israel 2 years ago. And there's no question that I went unconscious. And a person of, by the way, this is chapter 3 in my book, okay? God's with me, I have a fear, okay. Lulu Publishing, okay. But anyway, or Amazon, okay. Anyway, is that it was, as someone suggested to me, who believes in these things as I do and some of you believe, is that my soul left my body because I definitely saw from outside of my body, my head, for hitting the ground 2 times rather. I saw it, but I was out. Why do I know I was out? Because I was riding my bike going to temple, and the next moment I was looking up into the eyes of an EMT standing over me. So much time had passed that actually they were able to take my bicycle and rest it up against a tree, and this EMT was there. And yet I have no consciousness of what happened in between that, in the accident, and then looking up into her face. And when I described this to an ER nurse, she said to me that I died. and my neshama left me, and that saw my head hitting the ground twice. That saved me from death because my soul was outside my body, like with you, Roberta, and then what came back into my body, then joined the nefesh and the ruach, and that's when I reawakened again and was conscious.
Because remember, I had to climb up that ladder inside
Yeah.
my intestine. Would
Yeah.
that be leaving or how, or
Could be, or you were in, or your three levels of soul started separating from each other. The nefesh and the ruach are very much parts of the physical being of the person. The neshama is closer to the higher spiritual level, and they began to separate each other out as this trauma was occurring to your body, but then they were able to come back together again into one person, which is you.
thank God.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you,
God.
dear God.
Yeah, exactly. Baruch Hashem. Thank God. I think Barbara Mutz, you had your hand first, and we're going to end by definitely 8:30. Okay. Yeah. Barbara. Yeah.
6:30.
Is there any sense that souls are interacting with each other
Yes.
in the world to come? And
Yes.
if they are, what if you don't want to see or interact with a particular soul who wants to interact with you? I'm curious.
You better deal with that now.
Do not disturb.
That's a good question for which I really have no answer. Are you going to have to? The question is, are you going to have to be with people you don't really ever want to? You don't want to be with them during your lifetime. You're stuck with them later on. We'll find out.
That may be the hell part.
I don't know. Good question. I hope not. That's real. That's real. That's Gehenna, by the way. See, that's
That's
Gehenna.
it. That's like a
That's the other. I don't know. That's a good one. Yeah.
Okay.
I think.
Question.
Hey.
Is an out-of-body experience the soul leaving you? and
Yes.
coming back?
That's who we perceive it to be. That's like with my experience I had, Roberta speaking about, yeah, basically you'd say that. Those out-of-body experiences, or where, as some of you might have read some of these books, and Edgar Casey and these people, where a person's on an operating room table and they see their cells outside their body, like I saw my head hitting the ground twice. That would be considered where the neshama, the soul, leaves the body and begins its journey, except it's going to come back again. And then it re-enters the body and the person comes alive. Yes, that's the way that would be, it could be explained. Yeah. Linda Hart, I think you had your question, a hand up or no?
No.
Okay. Anybody else? Good questions. Wow. Everyone's thinking. Whew, boy, it's something, huh?
Rabbi?
Ronnie, yes.
Yeah, when my dad was in hospice, he was talking to people, and sometimes he would be coherent for a minute with me, and he'd say, I just talked to my brother. He said, there's guns there, we can go shooting. And then a little while later, he was sewing. And a little while later, he said, I'm going to buy ice cream for everybody. I hear the ice cream man. And he acted like he was literally eating ice cream. These were very real and concrete to him. Is that, I'm sorry?
No, so that wasn't me. That was someone else was talking.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that something that people you see, particularly when somebody is passing?
Their soul is already on its journey. It does stay somewhere, and I can't quote it, so I'll just say somewhere, but it does say in Jewish literature that the neshama, the higher level of the soul, when there's obviously a long illness, does leave the body 30 days before the person dies. So it's already on a spiritual journey into the next world, seeing relatives, visiting people. Sometimes a person will speak to a person who's passed away when they're dying, because they're already there. It's very interesting. My father died in my sister's home up in Westchester. And when he was on the first floor, and this was the 7th night of Hanukkah, Judy and I were up there, and we knew the end was getting close. He died of cancer. And I went to the room above where he was dying, I was very tired and I figured I'd close my eyes for a few moments. And I closed my eyes and I saw him with my two grandmothers who had passed away like 30 years, 20 years, whatever before that. And they were all hugging each other. And then a few seconds after that, my sister screamed and said, he's dead. So I do believe that I was witnessing him, a part of that soul, already meeting the souls of loved ones. There was an interesting experience from my Sloan Kettering days in pediatrics, unfortunately, particularly. There was this boy who was dying at that time. And his mother told me the following experience. He hated tuna fish. I mean, most kids, I don't know, but maybe not everyone, but most kids like tuna fish, not as much as peanut butter and jelly, but most like tuna fish. Okay. He hated it terribly. Anyway, he was dying. And whether he went into some type of a coma or whatever, he opened his eyes and he said to his mother, I want tuna fish. Where's a tuna fish sandwich? I want it now. She told me that a Hasidic, a rabbi, a Kabbalist, a Jewish mystic, came and visited her and her son. And she told this story about the tuna fish to this rabbi. And he gave the following interpretation. Your son's neshama already had left his body and was in Olam Haba. Now, why would he say that? And that is because, for those of you who heard me say many times at Passover Seders, is why do we eat gefilte fish? And that is because in the Messianic time, we will all eat of the great Leviathan, the great fish that was prepared for us before time itself, according to Jewish tradition. In other words, tuna fish, okay, in the world to come. He already had gone to the world to come, but his soul came back into this world when he opened his eyes, and he had actually tasted a little bit of the world to come, but came back again to live a little longer. So there are spiritual things that are occurring all the time. And when we begin to, similar to what someone asked the question a few moments ago, when we say that these things are possible, then something very special and beautiful happens. So for us to say, forget that story about Enoch, that can't be. I always say I always turn around and say, why can't it be? Why can't it be that there was someone, Enoch, Irving, doesn't matter what the person's name was, who went on a journey and saw the angels of God, and these angels took him on a tour of Olam Haba, and he came back and shared this with us. Because if anything is possible, if the beautiful things we see in this world are possible, if the ability for all of us to do this Zoom is possible, then why can't that be possible? You could say, well, we don't know how it happens. Guess what? I mean, obviously someone knows. I don't know how this is happening right now. I have no idea how now 28 of us are in communication with each other from our own, wherever we're located. To me, I don't know, how is that even possible? Well, guess what? I also understand how it's possible that a soul could leave a body and come back. But guess what? If this is possible, then why not is that as well?
Now, Rabbi, Frank was just saying right before his mother died, the nurse told us that she said to the nurse, I see my husband there. He's waiting for me. He's waiting for me. And he came to get me. And then she died a few minutes later. And the nurse said she said it as clear as could be.
Yeah. I'm sure he saw his father welcoming him into the next world, Olam Haba, where all souls go, where all of our loved ones, where all of our friends, where we will be. And hopefully, I pray that all of us will be sitting right in the front row and see the best picture there is all the time. Well, everyone, it is 8:32 now. So I hope you enjoyed tonight and got and it gave
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you,
Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
It's great to see
Stay
everybody.
healthy.
Enjoyed
Take
seeing
care,
you all.
everybody.
Take care, Rabbi.